Mr. Khan, you state in your testimony that the price of solar photovoltaic has dropped 30% already this year. Bloomberg and Businessweek are reporting that it's dropped 42% already this year. So it's clear that there is a precipitous drop in solar photovoltaics right now. And that's one of the reasons why Solyndra and Evergreen have declared bankruptcy, because you got to keep up here. And this surplus that we're running with China on solar technology is a good example of how fast our industries here are moving in the United States. It's a Darwinian, paranoia-inducing marketplace out there. And it's moving much more rapidly than most experts had predicted just a year or 2 or 3 years ago. So all the projections of how much solar can play in terms of electrical generation is really out the window, given what's happening. How long do you think it'll take, Mr. Khan, for solar to match the price of generating electricity from other sources of energy that people get off the grid?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, I should say it will take a different amount of time depending on what technology you're comparing it to and what location. Obviously, electricity prices differ.
But in general, are we talking 20 years from now, or is this pace moving so quickly that solar is going to be competitive much more quickly than anyone projected?
I think it's much more quickly than 20 years. We just saw a study put out last week by the European Photovoltaic Industry Association, which suggested some locations in Europe with no incentives will see grid parity or fossil fuel competitiveness within the next 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years.
I think in the U.S. it'll be within, we have the investment tax credit through 2016. By that point, I think we'll be there. In
grid parity, incredible. Do you agree with that, Ms. Gordon?
I do agree with that. I think that in Europe, they have the benefit of a very consistent suite of policies that makes it clear to investors.
But it's a global marketplace.
Exactly, that there will be demand. It is a global marketplace. We can sell into it even if we're not providing it.
Exactly. Thank you. Do you agree with that, Mr. Larson? Is it dropping as you look at the comparative energy sources? Is it going to happen a lot more quickly than anyone thought?
My area of expertise is focused more on the non-renewables.
That's so okay, then. Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, I know your company has worked on that issue.
Yes, same thing. My specific area is on fossil fuels.
Yeah, well, we have a report here from Wood Mackenzie on renewables, which is very bullish on the subject. Without objection, we'll include it in the record. It's not in his area of expertise.
But without objection.
Thank you so much. I have a chart here, which is put together by an MIT professor, the top guy really in the country, Dr. Emmanuel Sachs. And this is kind of the Moore's Law for solar. It's every time that there's a global doubling of installation of solar, the price drops by 18%. It now seems to be speeding up even more quickly. And in fact, this company has received a grant to basically reduce by 50% the manufacturing process to cut the cost of wafers, which is the primary input into solar panels, by 50%. And so the administration has made that announcement. Okay, so again, this race is moving at a pace that is absolutely outstripping any of the projections that people had made for this entire area. Ms. Gordon, right now oil companies are sitting on 60.5 million acres of public lands onshore and offshore on which they are not producing oil. Just offshore, the Interior Department estimates that there are 11.6 billion barrels of oil under these leases that oil companies aren't even using. These are leases that oil companies already have where we all agree they should be drilling. As that committee is looking at ways to increase revenue and reduce the deficit in order to make recommendations to the supercommittee, don't you think we should be considering policies to incentivize these companies to start drilling on the leases that they already have?
I do, absolutely. As you said, we have both onshore and offshore resources that are already leased and have not been drilled. In fact, contrary to what many think about the public lands in the Intermountain West, We only have about 1% of the land out there that's not accessible to drilling. There's an enormous amount of land that's accessible and not being drilled right now. I do think that we should provide incentives for companies to drill in the land they have now. I also think it's important to note that production in the oil industry was up 60% last year. It's the highest it's been since 1987. Huge amount of production going on right now domestically, huge profits domestically. We are seeing growth in this area. I don't think that we need to move into new areas and new incentives for more production in new areas when we have all that land idle.
Should we extend the 1603 tax breaks?
The 1603 tax breaks are critical.
You and Mr. Khan agree
Absolutely.
with that? Thank you, appreciate it. Ms. Gordon, dramatic increase in natural gas reserves in the United States, combined with the, we'll call it the Fukushima fallout. What does that mean in terms of the likelihood of utility executives in our country investing in nuclear power over the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, you know, the natural gas gold rush has just changed the landscape. You know, I was just saying yesterday that 5 years ago we wouldn't have even talked about this as a major issue, but now natural gas has changed the game. It will have an enormous impact. We heard from Exelon Power, for instance, that the EPA rules are not what's a threat to the coal industry. Natural gas prices are the threat to the coal industry, so it really will be a game changer. The price of natural gas coming down and the price of solar coming down, actually, are both important to utilities and what they'll do with nuclear. What we're hearing from the nuclear industry itself is that they're increasingly looking overseas for investment because it is just not cost competitive to new nuclear.
And I think that's important for everyone to understand. Natural gas and the rapidly declining cost of renewables is just destroying the long-term economic prospects here. If you're in a communist country or a socialist country, you can avoid market pressures, but here in the United States, you cannot. And Mr. Khan, this emerging market in solar is something that could be, for the United States, a great job creator if we focus on it, if we extend the 1603 tax credits. As solar approaches the cost of generating electricity from other sources, what kind of job growth could we be talking about here in the United States?
That's a good question, and I will say we haven't done a job forecast for solar, so I can't give exact numbers. But as you said, we saw in 2010, we had about 100,000 employees in the solar industry. More than half of those were installation and distribution value chains. So the bigger we build the market here, the more of those installer jobs, engineer jobs, system designers, distributors, those are all jobs that are going to be growing exponentially.